Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me on these Thursday excursions into the world of sports is the one and only Gary Stein. Gary, how are you, my friend?
Doing great, Stanley. How about you?
All right. I'm doing great. I think this is one of our favorite nights of the year, the
No
three or
doubt.
four times a year that we have on the sports business guys, Marty Conway and Andy Dolich. And we're going to start talking sports business in just a moment. First, I got to tell you that in addition to the Costa Sin, we're brought to you by AJ Michaels, expert and award-winning AJ Michaels heating, AC plumbing, and home performance will improve your home's energy efficiency and comfort levels. The AC season is upon us. New rebates and discounts are still available. More at ajmichaels.com. And as I mentioned, the Costa Sin is a sponsor, and also our friends at Superbook Sports, Camden Yards, first ever Superbook there at the grounds of Camden Yards. Joining us right now, Marty Conway and Andy Dolich, and let's get cracking, guys. In the world of sports business. Gary, this is something I know you wanted to talk about for a long time, like about 6-7 weeks ago. You read a terrific article, you said, on the collapse of these RSNs that Sinclair Broadcasting had. Marty, what's the name of it? Diamond
Sports Holdings is a subsidiary of Sinclair Broadcasting. Yeah.
All right. So my question for you guys, Andy and Marty and Gary, I know you'll have plenty of questions on this topic, is what the hell happened, Marty?
What the hell happened?
We know the end result is
I know.
They ended up collapsing.
Yeah.
How many RSNs went under?
Well, so when you go back in 2019, actually, Sinclair created Diamond Sports Holdings, and they purchased 22 RSNs from the Walt Disney Company, who had bought them from Fox as a part of a massive deal that they acquired Fox Studios and other things of the sort. By law, by regulatory, they had to spin those off. They weren't allowed to keep those along with the ESPN network. They happened to sell them to this entity, Diamond Sports Holdings, for about $10.5 billion, of which, unfortunately, two things happened. Number one, Diamond had to finance and borrow about $8 billion of that, so a substantial amount. And in 2019, although it was an iceberg melting, I think those involved thought that the cash flows would last longer than they did. COVID happened, a number of things happened, and the escalating path of people cutting their cord, canceling their cord, whatever they were doing, accelerated to the point that now, 3 years later, they are left with the, frankly, inability to make all of the payments that they committed to those MLB teams, NBA, and NHL teams.
Marty, is that basically because the RSN concept is much more dependent not on selling sponsorships to pay for rights fees? Yeah. It's how many subscribers you're going to have.
Yeah, people like us, our generation, we bought things in the bundle, right? We were comfortable buying the bundle of 200 stations, et cetera. For the last 10 years, the millennials and Gen Z are not interested in that at all. They want to buy anything one by one, whether they buy one page of a newspaper or one song or one package on TV. That's really what it comes down to generationally. And that shift has, as I said, accelerated to the point where that idea of buying anything in a bundle, particularly media, is just no longer going to be the case. And so you have the very top, Disney, saying ESPN is struggling that way, and everybody on through. For me, the media problem in sports right now is what I consider like an existential problem, right? It's like climate change going on in our environment. You have to recognize what it is, and you have to be able to deal with it. And most of the leagues and teams were late to do this. And now they're starting to see the emergency panic button has been hit, and they're looking to come up with other strategies to get their games out there.
Marty, let's talk about that magnificent Pac-12, 10, 8, 6, 4 conference. And Marty said it right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, hold on.
And I would just say to this, NSAS Can anybody tell me what NSAS stands for in terms of the end of the regional sports network? And I'm very proud to have been terminated by one 2.5 years ago, because why should we pay clowns like him when we can just rebroadcast games? NSAS is nanosecond attention spans. And that's what we're dealing with in today's sports world. If you don't have that, you're yesterday's news.
That's a good
All
point.
Gary, can you bring us home? I know you've got questions.
So Andy,
about
let me ask you on that note. First of all, I just want to say to anybody watching, if they don't know what an RSN is, okay, it stands for Regional Sports Network. So for instance, if you're in Baltimore right now, Masson would be a regional sports network. You know, NBC DC, NBC Washington would also be an RSN. But Andy, so on the point of Diamond Sports Group basically giving back the rights to Arizona now and San Diego, there's probably going to be a couple other teams coming up as well. I think Minnesota may be the next domino to fall. How do fans of those teams in those markets now watch the games?
Well, let me just interrupt real quick. Did they give them back to the teams, or MLB has taken them over?
MLB took it over, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I believe, and I know this sounds completely insane, but in the next few years, you'll be able to inject yourself with the sports that you want to watch. You'll just inject them, and then you'll move your eyes like this, and you can get whatever. Now, that's not going to happen for a while. The real part of this that I think is most significant is now colleges, conferences, and the NCAA are going to have to market their A's off, and they don't do that very well. And I think you guys will agree, at least the pros in certain areas, man, they really know how to go after a market. In college, it's like, we're fine, it's great. Oh, where did everybody go? And then, I mean, if you look at the Pac-12, that wasn't just the Pac-12, that was states, presidents, athletic directors, and the NCAA going, oh, yeah, they all left. What do we do now?
So
do me a favor, Andy. I made the mistake tonight of not communicating to you my little schedule of what we wanted to talk about. I had the conferences as entirely different discussion. Can we confine this to the baseball right now? And then we're going to get into that. I
always follow whatever you guys tell us to do. And then Marty and I try to go in the opposite direction.
So tell us, Marty, what is MLB doing? Andy, tell us what MLB's doing to give those fans in Arizona, San Diego, some of their baseball, or all of their baseball.
I'd have to turn it back to you. And I know Marty has an answer, but if you look at the circumstance with my favorite baseball team, the Oakland A's, who are only 46 games away from being 500 if they win 46 in a row.
Getting there.
And the unbelievable Baltimore Orioles, who are flying high when nobody predicted it, eyeballs are attached to winning. And at least in the marketplace of the Bay Area, the A's do not have a terrestrial radio station, and you'll see them on NBC Sports Universal, NBC Sports Bay Area. But the Giants have the #1 spot. Football's coming back. All the pre and post game shows, which are important, they've been whacked. So it's like, see ya, bye.
So what's happened in Arizona and San Diego in particular is, and it's also happened to the Phoenix Suns in the NBA, which is when those rights have reverted back to the team, and yes, the leagues have gotten involved to help them with production, they've turned to station groups, media station groups. So for example, Hearst is a station group, Nexstar, Gray Television, where they have these bundles of net stations around the country, and they happen to have one in Arizona and one in Minnesota, where it is. And they're actually now working with the teams on carrying those games on those stations. And so if we were here in Baltimore, that would be like having the games on Fox 45 or somebody like that. So what they've done, Gary and Stan, is the problem that they had was when the RSNs were drying up and the cord cutting, the reach that those teams were getting was dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, right? Because fewer and fewer people had a pay television package. Now they've gone to these local affiliate or non-affiliate stations and said, we want to put the games on here. And now suddenly in Phoenix, you have over 2 million people that can actually see the games. And then they've got to figure out how to pay for it. So it's sort of back to the future a little bit, where these are almost independent stations carrying the games because the teams need the reach. And then they've got to figure out how much is it worth? How do we pay for it?
And
So
many
just
of
for-
the teams, just one more point, many of the teams, their marketing, business operations staffs have dwindled to a certain extent because they were getting a large chunk from, the mothership. Now that they're not there, they've got to go out and sell their butts off to make these things work.
That could be a big comeback for Andy Dolich, leading a sales team for this.
Yeah,
David
But-
Rubenstein, not
But
me.
Marty, all kidding aside, how do the teams make up for the lost revenue in the long term?
Well, that's
I
the
guess
thing.
the short,
Yeah.
I guess the short term,
Right.
they're just gonna take a shave this year.
Well, that's what I said. That's the existential threat that they have. Those three leagues, Diamond Sports, I'm sorry, all those three leagues, MLB, NHL, and the NBA, they had over $4 billion tied up in regional media deals. And that is the existential threat.
Marty, repeat that. You said $4
$4 billion
with
between the three
league.
leagues in regional sports media deals. And so again, the NFL's separate. They have a big national deal. They don't have to worry about that. But the rest of these three leagues had these regional deals where they were so strong. And so, yes, in the meantime, that's the problem, right? I want more reach so that I can generally make more money through advertising or retransmission fees or whatever they're going to do. But in the short term, some of those franchises are looking at much shorter media contracts and less media contracts, which is going to impact free agency. It's going to impact a lot of things over the next several years. And you're going to see, Andy's right, you're going to see over the next couple of years, literally teams, players, association, everybody have to come together and say, what is our media strategy in these three leagues? Because if we don't have a media strategy, then we don't have a strategy. Because instead of having 12 people or 22 people selling season tickets only, now you might have to sell a season ticket, a streaming package, some other ability for you to do that reach. And so again, I think teams, like Andy said, have been caught flat-footed thinking they just had to sell attendance. And now they've got to go out and sell a reach of a TV or streaming network in order to have people see my games so that I can do all the other magic that goes with it.
And there's a wonderful, guys, Gary and Stan, there's a wonderful beta test about to play out in my favorite market, Las Vegas, because there's several teams that have the broadcast rights to Las Vegas. And if the A's deal is approved by MLB and they go there, the A's are going to go, well, wait a second, that's our market. You guys got to go away. Angels, Dodgers, see you later, San Diego. And those teams are going to go, excuse me, wait a second. No, that's not going to be. So that's just one example. What do they say? In the political shows, that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot to unpack. Like,
Right.
holy
So
crap.
Marty, let me ask you bigger picture here for a minute.
Sure.
Specifically, what we're talking about is Diamond Sports Holdings
Yes.
having this issue, the cord cutting. Basically, they've given back the rights.
Mhm.
But pretty much every team in these three leagues you're talking about has some type of RSN attached to their media rights.
Right.
If the larger issue is cable cord cutting, right, then what's the future here? Does cable actually, do RSNs have a future in general? Or will teams start streaming their games and offering it direct to consumer?
Right. So that's the conundrum that they had, which is when they sold these regional rights in the Mid-Atlantic or wherever they did, they sold them exclusively to a cable pay television provider. And it said, everybody else, you don't have access to have this. So these deals have to end. And what you've seen, say, in New England is a good example. New England Sports Network, NESN, owned 80% between the Bruins and Red Sox. They actually took their broadcasts and said, we will also make a mobile app for it as well. And if you want to see these games on the mobile app, you pay X amount per month or you pay it on cable. If you watch, the laboratory for this that's starting is in Washington, where Ted Leonsis bought the cable rights back essentially from NBC. And now he holds those rights. And he can say, I own the cable network. And if you subscribe to cable, you get my games. If you don't, I have this other package of $29 a month or whatever it is per year to watch the Capitals, the Wizards, etc. that's probably the model going forward that says they have to take responsibility for selling it no matter how you get it. The problem was all those exclusive rights were locked up in the RSN, and there was no ability to stream them and unwind that. And it's going to take some time for organizations, and you're going to see things like default with Diamond, where it's going to force into those opportunities. So it's a great opportunity, but there's a huge threat out there financially for the next several years, which I think some
And
organizations.
I'm glad Marty brought that up, because Leonsis is one of the few that can look at the sports marketplace with a telescope, a microscope, and a proctoscope.
Right.
He can pull that together, and they'll have the betting channel, they have the venue, they have multiple teams.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, what do I do now? I have a crummy baseball team and nobody's televising me. Well, Ted has looked at it as a 360-degree, 365-day a year revenue producer, and that is the smart way to go.
Yeah.
Marty, I wanted to swing back to Baltimore for just a second, because I'm wondering, for the last 5 or 6 years, the Orioles have been the bad guys in a deal that's sort of like what's happened nationally with all those RSNs. They were the bad guy that was keeping the Nationals, even though the Nationals signed the deal and the Lerners were aware of it when they bought the team. They signed a deal that said that they weren't going to own their rights entirely, that they were going to be second citizens on Masson. Peter suddenly doesn't look like that bad a guy, because those inflated dollars that the Nationals wanted and everybody thought that they were being deprived of, they didn't really exist anymore.
Right. Yeah. And so what you see in Washington is that money's guaranteed. Now, maybe the Nats don't think it's enough and they think there's some other valuation on it, but that money has been guaranteed. So there hasn't been the risk that you saw because they didn't have to take on, Masson didn't have to take on all of that debt that some of these other organizations have had to do. So up to this point, presumably, they've had the ability to pay both teams, the Nats and the Orioles. Now, I think, again, back to our example of Ted, I think if Ted gets involved in buying the Nats in one way or the other, and he has this cable ability now to sell, then I think there's going to be some unwinding of that at some part, and they may go their separate ways. But to your point, it was held together over the last 10 years, and the Nationals got their money guaranteed. They didn't have to worry about like what's happening in San Diego, in Arizona or Minnesota, where the next levels are. So it's a little bit of both. I'm sure it wasn't what they wanted, but the money did continue to come in.
And you mentioned it, that many of the owners in different sports, it's a net asset value play. And if you're a fan, you go like, what the hell's that? Does that score runs? No, but it makes the owner hundreds of millions or billions of dollars wealthier based upon the team. If you look at the ultimate global revenue generator of the NFL, what is it, $58 billion worth of media contracts already agreed to in the future, hence franchises worth between $4 and $8 billion. The other sports don't quite have that.
Right.
Andy, let me ask you this real quick, and then maybe Stan will move on to the next topic. But Marty was talking about Leonsis in DC. He owns the Caps. He owns the Wizards. He wants to probably own the Nats if he can. Just to refresh for a minute, there are no restrictions on cross ownership of different sports in a market. Is he restricted in any way?
So not within the sports that he's involved in the NBA or the NHL. Now, the NFL has some different rules on that, and they've changed those over time to try to accommodate and allow, say, an NFL owner to own an MLS team, et cetera. There used to be some of that. They've unwound most of that because of the lack of, frankly, buyers in some of these areas. But in the areas that Ted is mingling in, Major League Baseball, the NBA, for example, or the NHL, they don't have those kind of. And so consolidation and ownership of the market could be a very positive thing there.
But Gary, I thank you that you have an intelligent person on this call as we get together. But one other area here.
Was that a dig at me?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Oh, there's only one person with intelligence on the call. The three of us, Mo, Larry, and Curly, can figure out who that is. Anyway, that aside, You look at massive global, Curly, nice. You look at massive global corporations, and you will see a time in the future where a league is brought to you by a sponsor. And that sponsor has paid multiple billions of dollars. Welcome to the Google Hockey League. It's great. And all of these interactions technologically with people that have seen the future, a la Leonsis, I think it's only getting started in terms of people that really are looking at the global aspect of sport to maximize what they have.
All right, I've got to pay a couple bills here right now and tell you that now is the time to place your baseball bets and your preseason football bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use promo code, get a load of this, guys, StanCharles23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23, all one word with no spaces. Don't miss out this season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code StanCharles23. Guys, I forgot to tell Marty this topic, and Andy, you didn't know anyway, but what you just talked about, the Google Hockey League.
Yeah.
One of the things I see in sports that's just happened over the last 8 weeks is this thing where the Live Golf Tournament, the Live Golf Tour and the PGA have assimilated. Basically, the Saudis have bought out the PGA. And I see that the Wizards or Monumental Sports have sold 5%. I guess it's awaiting approval, but 5% of Ted's holdings, sports holdings, Qatar is buying. Is this a good thing for sports or a bad thing for sports?
Well, it's a thing. We'll see the good or the bad part about it, but
It's
I would
an
say
expensive thing.
Yeah, I would say this. Look, I did some traveling in that part of the world on some World Cup strategy for the country of Qatar, et cetera, and did that. What my observation is that for the last, 75 years, most of the money moved from the West to the East, right? Everybody wanted to expand. They want to be in China. They want to be in the Middle East, et cetera. Now some of that money that's in their sovereign wealth funds is moving to the West. And that's what's got people a little bit upset of getting involved in the sports. But the fact of the matter is, you talked about Monumental Sports offering and selling 5% of their overall value to the Qatari Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's around $225 million. That's valuing Ted's total universe at $4 billion. How many other organizations or individuals would be willing to put up more than $200 million for 5%? Right. I could put up $200 million and I could buy a lot of things 100%. And so I think that's what the relative issues are here, is who's willing to do minority share investments at these elevated levels, with the exception of sovereign wealth funds. So I think it is, like I said, it's a thing. Will it be something where there's a control? Probably not. But we went through this before with corporate ownership in sports. We didn't think it was a good thing, that Fox owned the Dodgers or that the Wrigley Company owned the Cubs. So
or CBS owned the Yankees.
Yes, on the Yankees.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, in the United States of America, our political system is perfect, right? Absolutely perfect every day. And everyone around the world believes it. Maybe not. But to Marty's point and the questions that you gentlemen have asked, we are now looking at a global sports marketplace. And to Marty's point, U.S. companies and individuals are spending billions to buy EPL teams. 300 million people are watching the NBA or more in China. The green is ultimately going to rule. Politics aside, you look at us in terms of how we're viewed in other parts of the world. It's like, well, I don't know about those guys, but if you look at basketball and soccer / football, unlimited upside in the richest people in the world buying into those teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, Stan, I mean, it's true that Qatar is looking for 5% of Ted's empire, but it's not unheard of. I mean, the royal Middle Eastern families have been buying into the EPL for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
I mean, they own probably the
It's
majority.
new for us in the United States.
Hi, I'm
It is.
Prokhorov.
It is.
I'm one of
Right.
Vladimir's
Yep.
good friends. How are those Nyets doing? The Nyets, N-Y-E-T-S,
And
right?
who bought the franchise from him but Joe Tsai, right?
Joe
And
Tsai, yeah.
Tsai,
Right,
he's,
exactly.
he's a high level.
And that is a perfect example. If you look at Russia and China and those guys involved in the business of those countries and the politics.
So I'll leave you with
Marty-
this. The last deal for the Major League Soccer was with Apple, right? Apple bought the rights globally. They didn't buy just the US, et cetera. That is the model that some will have to go on, which is companies that can market their game globally, bring Messi to the league, and now sell MLS subscriptions in Argentina and other places like that. So the model going forward, I think you'll see the next NBA deal be something like that, where there'll be a global component of it from a media standpoint. So we're seeing this strike a new direction. And I think the regionalization of this is starting to fall apart because, as Andy points out, the bigger dollars are when you can collect everything globally and distribute it on that basis.
Just think, Stan and Gary, how many Orioles there are in the world and that could buy into Baltimore, right? I mean,
Well,
there's the
I think
Vienna
that that's-
Orioles, there's the Montevideo Orioles, there's
Well, but
Orioles everywhere.
all kidding aside, everybody you talk to, like you talk to people experienced in the world of sports, have basically said at a certain point in time, the Orioles are going to have to be sold, after Peter dies. And to me, this 5% or 10% of the Orioles is the perfect way for the Angelos family to hold on, or John to hold on to the Orioles. He'd be looking for a partner to put $225 million into the Orioles.
Yeah.
Marty?
Yeah.
The Orioles aren't worth $4 billion, though, are they?
No, I think a lot of it has to do with who do you
With
want your
what-
partners to be and different things. But
Right.
look, the Qataris have a lot of interest. They have a lot of real estate in Washington. They're very familiar with the marketplace, and they also understand what Ted's future is in terms of raising that $4 billion to now worth $5 or $6 billion. Because that $250 million, it needs to become $600 million in 10 years. So when they
Yeah.
pull it out, then they can go do other things. So these are kind of apples and oranges on a lot of these things, but each of them are unto themselves. But we will see more of this where minority investment costs are so high, who can actually do that, where you're willing to say, I don't want anything, I don't want any control, I don't even want tickets or parking, here's my money, use it in the best way
The
possible.
Global Audubon Society is about to purchase all the teams that have a bird in their name for multiple billions of dollars.
Let's circle back. I'll tell you what, let's reserve the talk about how college is shrinking and finish up tonight, because I know Marty's got to go. Let's finish up with Oakland. Is this a done deal, Andy? And we'll have you guys back together again to talk about the realignment and in college football.
Just finished
college.
one of our most successful
There we
book
go.
events.
There you go.
Just finished one of our most successful book events in Oakland about 3 hours ago as I sped back to get with you guys. There were a number of influential Oaklanders there.
Yep.
There is conversation going on to finally galvanize these community efforts, the reverse boycott, the cell group, Save Oakland Sports. I can talk about that in the future to activate a political individuals, elected officials, to start using their legal, legislative, and business hammers against Fisher and Rob Manfred. So that is percolating. Number two, the lawsuit that is now being created by the Nevada State Teachers Association against the Nevada legislature on the $385 million worth of public money that they gave Fisher when he said he didn't need any public money.
Right.
The teachers union is going after the governor and the state legislature. And of course, it's 114 degrees. People are talking to Tony Clark, the head of the National Baseball Players Association, saying, excuse me, Tony, you're going to let your guys play 81 games outdoors
Right.
until the
114.
dome is built in a minor league ballpark? I don't think so. So my view, it's a long way from a done deal. And the Major League Baseball players the Major League Baseball owners who were supposed to vote on this the week that the Nevada legislature passed the money, they haven't voted yet. And there are people like Hal Steinbrenner who've been outspoken against the deal. So I find that, I mean, will they approve it? Probably. What do they need, Marty? 75% of ownership
Right.
to approve it? Probably so, but there's a lot. Well, I'll give you this insider tip. This week, 29 owners of Major League Baseball are receiving a copy of Goodbye Oakland, along with a letter from me and Dave Newhouse going, time out, ladies and gentlemen. You need to think about this, and I'll happily send you guys the letter that I sent.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
I would like to see it. Yep.
You brought up an interesting point, Andy, and I'd like to get Marty's take on it, though. How to split that media market up. That is fascinating. I hadn't even thought about that, but for years, I guess LA and San Diego have been the market's most, and that's 3 teams in LA.
Yep. There are very few places.
The Angels. So how do they divvy that up, Marty?
Well, that's the issue. So Andy knows there were very few markets left in the country that were not pledged to a particular team. They were considered what they call shared territories, whether it was Nashville or Charlotte at one time. There were things like that. And ultimately they have to knife that up when they do expansion, and they end up giving that out. But in addition to saying to people, please buy this book because you will not regret. There's a lot of great
breaking news.
Oakland.
Breaking news.
Yes.
10 days ago, Triumph Publishing came to Dave Newhouse and I and said, gentlemen, the book has sold enough copies that in 2024, we are publishing a paperback version of your book with additional chapters based upon all the craziness that we get to talk about with you guys.
Right.
So you can start paying us to be on this Zoom every so often.
I just bought the A's for $4 billion.
Just as an aside, as good as the information is here about the politics and the issues of Oakland, the chapters about what the Oakland A's did with Billy Ball is worth anybody's time, marketing wise, et cetera, because that was a genius.
Thank you, Marty. And that wasn't Billy Bean and Moneyball. That was
that was the old days. Yep.
So whether it's expansion or eventually we talk about college athletics, understand that the through line right now for the sports industry is media. If you had to stack in order, like what are our key strategies and where do we get most of our revenue from? Those first 3 areas are media related. By the time you get down to attendance and merchandise and all that. And so that becomes the question that I think the other owners, and I think Andy's onto it. It only takes 7 or 8 owners to get together and say, we're gonna be absentee, we're not gonna vote or whatever it is, and to run this out over time, perhaps and until they force a new owner change into Oakland or there's some other opportunity that comes along, because we know this. We know that they want to preserve markets for expansion fees down the road. And they really, really, really don't want to allow teams to move from one market to the other without that $2 billion
or especially, Marty, especially Rob Manfred said 3 months ago, there's going to be no relocation fee charged to John Fisher.
Right.
Yeah, I still want the Supreme Court of someplace to figure out how that went away.
Well, if they can give the justices a free RV, maybe you'll get them.
Well, I guess so, and sleep in a Walmart parking lot. But the other point here that I think is salient, and Marty used a lot of big words like juxtaposition and nuance.
Salient is very big.
Right.
Salient is the biggest word.
Yeah, salient. So the point is, what is media going to look like 2 or 4 or 6 years from now? We use the term, quote, media. Mm-hmm. What is it going to be? What is the media going to be? And it's going to change, and it is going to revolutionize in areas that we just don't know right now.
Right.
Marty, let me ask you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you one final question. This is a real basic question. 5 years ago, Vegas had no sports teams. Right. Now, all of a sudden, if the A's move, they're going to have 3. I'm going to assume for a minute that they're going to get an NBA team eventually, because why wouldn't they?
Sure.
So they're going to be 4. But when you think about cities that have 4 sports teams, you think about cities with huge populations.
Yeah.
New York, Miami,
Mhm.
Philly, LA, etc. I know that a lot of visitors come into Vegas, but can Vegas actually support 4 professional sports teams?
I
Ladies
don't
and
think,
gentlemen, sorry, Marty. Ladies and
Go ahead.
gentlemen, today's game with the Nevada Bedouins versus the Cleveland Guardians, both teams 75 games under 500, come out to the park early. A's president Dave Cavill said the A's would sell out every single game when they opened their stadium in 28. The heat definitely got to Dave.
yeah.
Vegas is definitely you play big or go home. So Gary, to your point, Dave Newhouse and I are going to work on an outline for Goodbye Las Vegas. How Las Vegas lost, and a football fine, hockey they're Stanley Cup champs. A's, we'll see. Hoop, it's going to be successful because it's going to be owned by the players and superstars. But that marketplace is thin. You look at their economy, big story in the New York Times 2 days ago, how Nevada is suffering economically. They have problems with water, electricity, and all of that billion-dollar gaming revenue doesn't go, as we speak today, to the players or the owners or the leagues.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I think there's a question about whether there's enough media revenue and corporate sponsor revenue because that is sustaining revenue, as we know, in every sport, because it comes in whether you win or lose, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of questions about that. Look, I think the NBA right now loves Vegas. They do it in the summer. They have the summer league. I think they will eventually go there. But right now they have the best of both worlds, because for about 8 weeks in the summer, everybody in the NBA goes there for a period. So it's a question about what to do. But I think, Gary, you're onto it. I think there's real questions about whether beyond the NBA, beyond the NFL and then the NHL, which they've really done a great job of gamifying it and presentation of whether they could do that for baseball. And I think that's what the other owners are looking at, is saying this move has to be bulletproof. We can't have a situation where we move a team and then find out 5 or 8 years later that it's another Tampa market, and it's just not going to work.
And many of the colleges in basketball have gone or will be going to Vegas for their postseason tournaments. Who could have ever believed that a few years ago? And now there's 4 or 5 conferences that have their postseason championships in Vegas.
Right. And I think if you ask baseball where they would want to move, they would want to move to Mexico. They'd want to move Mexico City. I mean, they'd want to go to places like that, which really enlarge the game instead of sort of survival mode for one franchise.
2 best expansion markets in North America for baseball: Mexico City and Oakland.
Hey, and also, Andy, this baseball stadium that they're supposed to be building in Vegas, if they do, so initially it's the minor league park. How many seats are in that minor league park?
9,200 or so.
And can they build more?
No, it is completely surrounded by the ownership aircraft carrier of the stadium, the Howard Hughes Corporation. I'm not making this up.
Wow.
The Howard Hughes Corporation owns Las Vegas ballpark, and they've built condos and their office building around it. I mean, could they put some more tickets in, some more seats in there? Yeah, but what's it going to be like when they play 178 games in there with the Aviators and the Bedouins? What's that going to be like?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I don't know where Stan. Is Stan trying to come back? Let's see. I think we pissed him off. Stan, you there?
Great.
Stan, did we say something?
I don't know, but Marty has to educate the leaders of tomorrow to pay our
Marty's gotta
retirement fees.
That's all right. I'm good for a few more minutes or whatever you need
All right.
to do.
That's a first for us. I got bumped off of my own Zoom. Anyway, what did we end up talking about, guys? Then the last 2 minutes of panic. My internet was down.
We were talking about the additional sports focus of Vegas, and everybody's going to Vegas, and how long can that last?
All right. Well, with that, we're going to part company tonight. Appreciate Marty Conway being on with us at all. The book is, nobody can see it. It's Goodbye Oakland. It's written by
There it is.
There it is. There it is.
Dolich
Goodbye,
and
Oakland.
Dave
Great game.
Newhouse. There we
There
go.
you go. I want an autographed copy, by the way.
Okay, that's $24.50. Not a problem.
That's all right.
Autograph's free.
I'll wait
No,
for, I'll
seriously,
Book is free, the
seriously,
autograph's
Gary,
$20.
send
I'm
me
waiting
your
for the
email, send
paperback.
me your mailing address.
I'm waiting for the paperback. I'm
Yeah,
waiting
I
for the
figured you
paperback.
would. Yeah,
Gary, the book is free. The autograph's $24.
right. I will get both of
Perfect.
you gentlemen complimentary copies through the publisher now that we are making more money than Stephen King.
All right. What's next in your writing, Andy Dolich? What are you going to write next?
Oh, I'm writing a book called Bat Out of Hell: How China Took Down the United States Without Firing a Shot.
Mm.
All right. Sounds good.
I'm
Sounds
using my
good.
American University political science degree.
All right. Marty, I know you have to go
About time.
teach. Let's not wait so long. We'll do one as we get ready for the World Series. All right.
Absolutely.
Good boys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hang
Always-
on
Always
for-
great. See you, fellas.
All right. See you guys. Gary, can you hang on with me for a minute?
I will for a minute.
All right. Gary Stein and I'm sorry about that. That was crazy there. All of a sudden, everybody
happened?
froze. And I thought when everybody freezes, you tend to think they're freezing. It was my internet went out and I just got all of a sudden booted off. I even
Gotcha.
texted you. I said, "Are you still on?"
Oh, yeah. I
Anyway.
see it here. Yep. Yep.
Hey, next week on Wednesday, we're going to do our weekly Thursday Zoom on Wednesday night. And we're going to be talking to John Kelly from Kelly Benefits, who's also the chair of the Maryland Cycling Classic, which is taking place Labor Day weekend. We'll have all the latest news and information, getting people ready to participate in that event. I hear it's a great event to go watch, from
Yeah.
different
No, and I
locations.
think it's much improved this year. We were talking to Terry Hasseltine about it. He's very excited.
Yep. So let me just tell people that we're, in addition to AJ Michaels and Superbook Sports, we're also brought to you by our good friends at the Costas Inn. If you are looking for a place to grab crabs, give them a call at 410-477-1975 to find out what their availability is, what the prices are, sizes, and all that. You won't be sorry. The Costas Inn, one of the best crab houses in the state of Maryland, or in the Maryland, Virginia, Delaware region where crabs are so popular. Okay, that's it for us tonight. I'll be back Monday with Ross Grimsley and our guest on Monday will be John T-Bone Shelby, who I
Good one.
reconnected with at the 40th reunion of the '83 World Series. All right, that's it
Sounds
for
good.
now, and we'll be back to you next week. Thank you, guys. Bye.